we'll be talking about raising a child with special needs. I'll quickly introduce my guests for this evening so we can jump right into the conversation. And I'll start with Dr. Sabrina Chitaka, who is sitting right next to me. Dr. Sabrina Chitaka is a pediatrician. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Josephine. Good evening, viewers.
And right next to Dr. Sabrina is Esther Okwi, who is an education advisor with UNICEF. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Josephine. Good evening, viewers.
All right. And at the center is Abril, who is also joining us. Right after he drinks his water, we'll learn a bit more about him. But right next to him is Dr. Naboth Cole, who is the Director of Special Children, Special People.
Yes, thank you, Josephine, for inviting me. Good evening, viewers.
And then finally, we have Abril's mother, Rosemary Namboze, who is the Executive Director for Angels Center for Children with Special Needs. Welcome, Rosemary.
Thank you, Josephine. You're welcome, viewers.
All right. Well, let's say it as it is.
Abril, come and sit here.
Well, that's Abril, and he's going to be joining us for this session. And so I'll start with you, Rosemary, so you can tell us a little bit more about Abril. What special need does he have?
Thank you, Josephine. Yeah, my name is Rosemary, as I'm the mother of Abril. Abril was born in 2010. He's 6 years old. He was born in a hospital in Belgium at a time when I was doing my master's in globalization and development. And at birth, he was diagnosed with a disability called Down syndrome. And he had also a heart problem, and so he has undergone a heart surgery. He was also born with a hearing loss. He still has speech difficulties. And so the journey has been tough, but we are glad that he is growing. The development is getting better as he's growing.
What was it like, Rosemary, when did you know while you were still pregnant?
No.
But there's a possibility that you can actually know, Dr. Sabrina. Can you know when you're pregnant?
We are now able to do 4D ultrasound scans, and there's a possibility of detecting some of these disabilities. Also, if DNA is done on the amniotic fluid, some of these conditions can be detected early.
Okay. Rosemary, what was it like finding out, and at what point did you find out?
To be honest, I carried Abril for 9 months without knowing anything. And at birth, he couldn't breathe well. So immediately he was put on oxygen. It was, the word Down syndrome came to us at a time. Yes. Yes. Okay, sit here. I'm talking about you. Yes. So when the news came to us that Abril had Down syndrome, I had to ask the doctors, what do you mean by that word? What does it mean? How does it come? Because I had never heard about that word called Down syndrome. I didn't understand the disability. And in any way, I thought disabilities come as a result of polio, maybe, an accident and everything.
Had you seen him at this point?
No.
Yes, I will.
So, to me, when the information came to us that Abril had a disability, to be honest, my soul crushed. Because that was not my expectation of the baby I thought I would have. Everything changed at the moment they told us the news, because it's not the family I had planned for to have. And at that point, he was put on oxygen. I couldn't breastfeed him immediately. Myself, I was so frustrated with the news. And Abril himself, he looked so handsome. He looked very cute. But again, he was so problematic. He was really very sick. We actually didn't.
Were the problems evident? Like, could you see him and know that,
At birth, of course, I just saw a baby, a handsome baby boy, and the features weren't, when they are still small, the features really don't come out evidently. So sometimes you can even doubt what the doctors are telling you. Actually, I doubted. But after 1 month, the baby couldn't grow, couldn't change. He kept on oxygen. There was no change. He couldn't hear. He couldn't breastfeed. And then with time, I kept on coming to terms. I kept on coming to terms. But as he grows, the features become more evident.
Okay.
And actually, the trauma is harder.
But you had him in Belgium.
Yes, yes.
What is it like here for children who are born here? Because then there was a bit more care, I suppose.
Yes, exactly.
What is it like here?
Josephine, what do you mean more care? We also have a lot of care for children with disabilities, irrespective of the disability they are born with. Down syndrome for us is something we don't usually say. We use the term trisomy 21, and trisomy 21 is a condition where you have 3 sets of chromosomes at position 21. Human beings have 46 base pairs, so there are 23 chromosomes, but in pairs. So Abril's condition means he has an extra set of chromosomes at position 21, and that gives him his unique characteristics. And when you look at Abril, obviously he's a happy child, and that's one of the major characteristics. I believe Abril will grow up to be a musician.
True.
Already he's singing for us, and that is evident. But also the things that Rosemary has told us, the heart condition and then the hearing impairment are also common things that come with trisomy 21. Unfortunately, children with trisomy 21 are special in a way that their intelligence is not like astute like other people. So he cannot become, let's say, a pilot or a lawyer or a doctor, but he can do other things within his capacity. The other thing is he does have the trisomy 21, which gives him his unique conditions, but also his, they tend to have soft muscles, which I think Abril is already overcoming, so it's a good thing.
Dr. Nabot, you and Abril, of course, bonded. I'm told you met a while back, but I know you have your own story. Can you just briefly share it with us?
Oh, yes. As Rosemary was saying, it's not a simple thing for a parent to have a kid with a disability. It's the same, I think, the same applied to my parents. It was hard. And during that time, good enough for her, she was already in hospital. And they are a bit civilized. I'm talking of a lady from the village who doesn't know anything. And the first thing they told her was that this is the curse. Your child is bewitched. They bewitched your kid. So that is the struggle they first fought with until they told her, and for me, I was not born. I was not born a person with a disability. I got disabilities at the age of 6. And that was polio that really affected me. But the first thing they told them was, your child is bewitched. So they say, you know what? One of your aunties must have been the problem. So they had to fight with that. There is hatred. There is what? They are moving up and down, going to these traditional doctors, not knowing what to do. So it's so problematic for a parent with a child with a disability. It's very complicated. Unless you are a bit elite and you give birth in a hospital and you are advised accordingly, but it's not simple. And even when you have been advised, it's not something that you can really buy quickly. Sure. It's very complicated.
Well, Esther, you've been quiet so far, and I would want to know what UNICEF's mandate is for situations like this, for children like this, for parents raising children.
Thank you, Josephine. I think for UNICEF being an organization that wants to see every child live, thrive, and be able to achieve their full potential, of course, we are basically a development partner that supports our government to identify the gaps in its systems, to be able to strengthen the systems, but of course, most of all, to be able to address them. So I think for us, we support governments to starting with when children are adolescents, girls and boys, And then we support programs on pregnant mothers and, of course, early childhood development. And this means we have to support multi-sectoral programs, which include, which involve the different ministries and different stakeholders, including the CSOs. So I think really for us as development partners is really to support government, identify these gaps, see how to address them, but most of all, see how every child should be able to achieve their full potential in life.
I want to know, and this will go to you, Dr. Sabine, and I think to you, Dr. Nabot, what are the common causes for the disabilities in children?
There are so many disabilities that a child can get, but primarily if there's any damage to the brain, that can cause a disability, or if there's a congenital malformation, either in the formation of the genes or if there's replication of genes. And then also there's trauma, but also infections. Infections are very common causes of disabilities. So if you've heard from Naboth, he got polio, but polio is a preventable thing. So they are varied. And they look at each and every different sensation, visual, touch, hearing, taste. There are so
in
many.
In simple terms, for some of us who don't understand the legal, the medical terms,
yes.
Are some of them preventable? So, for example, immunization, because when you say polio, then we're talking immunization.
Yes.
What else can a mother or can a family do to
Okay, so like I keep saying, even before a woman thinks of becoming pregnant, she can prevent some of these disabilities. For instance, if mom is thinking of becoming pregnant or dad is thinking of getting his wife pregnant, then he should start buying for her folic acid and reducing the stress levels in this woman, because we know that taking folic acid can prevent hydrocephalus and spina bifida. Spina bifida is that swelling on the back or even a hole in the back, which causes spina bifida and the protrusion of the spine. And then it's associated with hydrocephalus or a lot of fluid in the brain. The other thing is checking when a woman is pregnant. Does she have conditions like syphilis or HIV or hepatitis or other infections which can be treated while she is pregnant? A lot of those things can prevent congenital infections which can insult the brain. Then in terms of delivery, I think we are all supposed to be concerned that if a child is born and they are not attended to properly, and then the child doesn't breathe quickly, then that is going to affect the child's brain. If a child has no oxygen in the short interim, like 7 minutes can cut off the brain a lot and cause insult to the brain.
Okay. Well, Dr. Naboth, what exactly does your organization do? And are your organizations, and I think this is also to you, Rosemary, because I know you have the Angel Center for Children with Disabilities. What are your organizations going into the rural areas, or are they just within? Because I know the child in the rural areas with special needs does not get the same attention that the ones who don't get.
But because of finances, we're not going throughout the country, but it's our desire too. And our focus has been so much to those parents who doesn't have the capacity to take care of their children well. And you ask me what we do. We do therapy, we do rehabilitation, we do orientation into formal education. The reason why we do that, I for one, I am a victim of that. A kid was born with a disability. You take him or her to school. To those people who are okay, upright, stigma is too high. So you have to prepare this kid to make sure that even if this kid joins others, she's not feeling it anymore. For me, I lost 5 years because they could laugh at me at school. And I went back home. I sat home for 5 years. Why? Because I knew, yes, what they were laughing at was real. And it's like, oh, which means I'm unique. I shouldn't be with them. Let me go home. So those are some of the things. Then we do rehabilitation. We do education. We also do we do orientation into formal education. You discover that by the kid leaves us to be taken back to the parents, he or she is able to communicate, she's able to, even if she has one hand, she can use that hand to write. Or if she doesn't have even hands and what, we train that kid. For example, we have a kid without arms, but he can now write using the leg.
Using the leg.
So we train them to make sure that they use that ability that is remaining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk more about how to raise a child with special needs when we come back from this break. We're coming to you live from the Kampala Serena Conference Center Nile Room. Unfortunately, Abril has gone out, so he won't be joining us for this session. But thank you for bringing him with us. I think it gives an idea of what exactly it's like to live with a child with special needs.
Exactly.
So is this a good day? Is this a normal day for him? What kind of day is it like?
Yeah, this is not a very normal day for him because he's seeing so many people around.
Yeah.
He's in a new place. He's wondering what exactly is taking place here. So in return, he tries to entertain us to see that everyone is so calm. So let me try to bring life in them. But on an ideal day of staying with a child with disability is, one, there's a lot of hard work. They are not toilet trained. So you have to keep on planning for him. Abril, it's now time to go to the toilet. Can we please go to the toilet? If you don't plan for him, it means that he will soil himself. Then when it comes to feeding, you still have to supervise. Much as we have trained him to feed himself, but you need to be there to support him. Otherwise, all the food will litter down. They normally want to do everything for themselves, like serving, but along the way you have to also be careful that there will be accidents along the way. You know, when you are preparing food, you don't leave a charcoal stove anyhowly because you just know an accident is going to happen. So a day of a mother with a child with special needs is an extra day. You all know that raising a child is hard, but to have a child with special needs, it's harder.
It's harder.
It's harder.
Double the work.
It doubles
Maybe
the
triple
work.
even.
So
Well, as we speak now, there's a clip that's showing on the screen, and our crew managed to go out earlier this week to get some clips. We have one from Salama, and then so we have clips showing children from deaf children and then blind children, and they'll be playing as we go along with the conversation. But I would want to know best practices. How do you train these children? Hands-on?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Josephine. One thing I will just use myself as example. They first identify your strength as a child with a disability.
Yes.
Which is not common with many people. They want to pamper you. They want to keep you, the way you are. If you cannot sit, they will, keep you sleeping. But what my parents did was to identify my strengths. What I'm capable of doing, and they capitalized on that to make sure that I can do something, and along the way I ended up doing everything for myself.
For example, I know you drive.
I drive.
And people don't expect that you do.
Yes, everything you do. I cook, I wash utensils, I wash my clothes, I place them, I do everything you can do in a house.
What has been your biggest hurdle to cross?
Or the perception, people's perception towards my life has been one of the biggest challenge. Even when I'm Dr. Naboth, somebody will remind me.
And that's a PhD?
Yes.
Yes.
They will remind me. One of my interesting,
They remind you.
I was once a taxi driver, and I loaded the group of people. I was in Kasese coming to Kampala. And as soon as I sat in the car, they all moved out. That is one. Secondly, you are walking on the street, even when you have parked your car, you are walking for some distance because our parking space in Kampala.
Yes.
You don't have reserves. And you are from your car walking towards somebody even very old. He has a coin of 100 to give it to you. So they are reminding you of who you are. But we're coming up to tell, and you appreciate it. You say thank you. Or the last time, an old lady gave me 100, and I gave her 20,000. Yes, to show that yes, I appreciate, but it's something different.
It's different.
Yes.
Also, I think we need to change the perceptions
We have
of people.
to change it. We need
Because
to.
other people are not doing what you're doing. They're on the street begging, so they assume that everybody is going to be the same way. So what's playing now is a school for the deaf in Tinda. Okay, well, my other question is, how far can we go? As organizations, as UNICEF, how far can you go in helping?
Well, I think for me, just picking up from what Naba has been talking about, I think for me it is really about the perspective out there, what people think about the person with disability, because I think people have gone into looking at the disability but not looking at the potential this person actually has to live, the capacity this person has, because I think when you look at people who have made it in life, the people who made them what they are saw something in them and gave them the opportunity to live and to thrive. But I think where people have lost it is that they look at the disability and they simply focus on the disability, but they don't pay any attention in terms of what can this person be, what does he need for me to help him. For example, in schools, what does a child need to get education? What does he need in a classroom? People only look at, okay, he's disabled. No, I mean, he cannot do this, he cannot do that, because they don't pay keen attention into the details of a specific child.
Esther,
So I think
our ordinary school, if I'm unable to take my child to a school that can cater for his needs, can an ordinary school that we have now give a child the support that they require?
I think looking at the government policy where we encourage or we promote inclusive education, I think the idea is currently every school should be able to take up any child. But I think in practice we realize that this is not the truth, because the school, the teachers are not able to receive this child. Much as in the trainings, of course, the idea is all teachers have been trained. But the training teachers go through is simply going through basics. But like we've seen, to handle a child, a specific child with disability, needs an in-depth understanding, an in-depth technical knowledge in terms of how this child can be held. So I think, well, I think in principle, in theory, that should be, but I think in practice, the schools are not ready to receive these children and to be able to provide for them.
Okay. Well, let's take some questions from the audience and some opinions or thoughts. Yes, I'll start with you very quickly.
Thank you, Josephine, for this incredible topic. My name is Ronald Sech-Toleko. I am the Executive Director and the founder of an NGO called Hope Always. We empower children with disabilities. I'm also a children's rights activist focusing on children with disabilities. I want to talk about the attitude towards children with disabilities. You know, the attitude the African society has towards children with disabilities has seen these children's rights being, you know, violated for decades. I want to tell you that I've ever presented a petition to the Right Honorable Speaker about the issues and rights of children with disabilities in Uganda. And I want to tell you this, that next week on Friday, I'll be flagged off by the Honorable Minister for Gender, Labour and Social Development. I'll be riding my bicycle throughout East Africa to raise awareness on the rights of children with disabilities in Africa.
Well, thank you very much. That's very commendable.
Okay, and I also want to tell you this, that we are working, as an organization, we're working hand in hand with the Ministry of Gender to establish a Uganda Center for Children with Disabilities, a center that will be providing social services to children with disabilities, because as a country, we've been lacking a center. So it's not going to be a home, but it's going to be a center. And I want to tell you that the government has endorsed this already by having a memorandum of understanding between the government of Uganda and Hope Always, the organization. Okay. After my riding throughout East Africa raising awareness, I'll also be raising funds for the construction of the center. And I know after that, very many teams in Europe and then the United States have expressed their interest to invite me, join them, ride with them, to raise funds for the construction of the Uganda Center for Children with Disabilities.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all of that with us. And I would like to ask, when we look at where can we learn best practices?
Unfortunately, there has been layback as far as children with disabilities is concerned. For example, as he was talking, there is something that hit my mind. When you talk about rehabilitation, when you talk about the policies, they look at it as if it is charity. When I was writing my PhD, I wrote about a rehabilitation approach for persons with disabilities. And there are two. There is right-based and charity-based. So quite a number, they use charity. It's as if they are helping you to rehabilitate you. It's my right to be rehabilitated. So unless it comes back to those people, and we say, look, you are not helping me, but you are playing your responsibility. You are playing your role. So it comes back to all of us to ensure that this person is not being helped, but is being guided.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that I like what everyone is saying, but at the end of the day, it's that parent with that child in that house really having a challenge. And I just want to say that whereas we use the strength-based approach for the child, we must not forget about the parent. I'm sure that Rosemary has said in no many ways that she's struggling. And we as a community of pediatricians, doctors, the country, the government, everyone needs to support Rosemary and her family to help Abel grow up and be a responsible person.
Well said.
But in the same vein, I want to say that we cannot work as independent people. Pediatricians cannot work alone. We make the diagnosis, but we need the teachers to be part of us. We need the occupational therapists to guide these people, and also it depends on the disability. There are all sorts of disabilities, and I think that in Uganda, people like to think about witchcraft and the easy way out and prayer healing and all those things. But we need to be realistic. Exactly. But in order for us to be realistic, we also need government to develop policies and a good implementation plan.
That's right.
For me to see Abril and knowing that maybe his school or his next school won't be able to support him, gives me a lot of pain as a doctor, because whereas I may manage his cardiac failure and his cardiac conditions, I'd like to see him progress.
True.
And like Dr. Naboth said, let us look for the strength in these people, but also people who think that it's charitable to offer $1 or a shilling or 100 shillings. What's that? I think that in this country, or even in this city, KCCA has put a ban on donations to street people and all these people, so that people wake up and understand that it is within their might and strength to move on and make a difference in their own lives. I've seen this great speaker who has no arms.
Yes.
Nikki Vujicic.
But he's amazing. And Nikki is like so many other people. Let us not wait for charity. I know that UNICEF is our development partner, but we cannot wait for UNICEF to do work for us. We as a country must do that work and help our people, because everybody in this country has a right to survive, has a right to live. But we cannot ridicule people because they are disabled. We must support them and help them.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sabrina. Let me just take one question, and then we'll hear from you very quickly. Okay. Do you want to be a bit louder?
Yes.
Yes, a bit louder.
Thank you, Madam Josephine. My question to Madam Esther. I was just inquiring, what strategies do these rehabilitation centers use to see that they get most of the children outside there? Because if you looked in places like Karangala, far away from Kampala, Gulu, and so many other places, they have children with special needs. So what kind of strategies do you use to see that these children are brought closer?
Okay. Esther?
Yeah, thank you. I think as UNICEF, we know per se there are many rehabilitation centers out there. But we also know that those children are taken there, and our wish is not for them actually to stay there. Actually, I think right now we are trying to discourage children from being taken to institutions. We want children should go and stay out with the community, should be able to stay with their parents or relatives. So I think, of course, there is a time within which you cannot avoid taking the children there. But I think for us, we're really supporting government and working with other CSOs organizations, first of all, to provide for these children when they go to those institutions, but again, to try to get them out of those institutions, to give them what they need to get out of those institutions, to be able to integrate well within the community. That's why even you find that for the street children, for example, we are discouraging the idea of institutionalizing them. We want them to be taken back to their area and to integrate them back in their communities.
But
so
what are we doing when we take them back? Are we equipping the communities to be able to handle them when they're brought back?
It is actually a whole process, because the child himself or herself also needs to get to know that, you know, she or he can be a better person. And I mean, I think this is like a multi-sectoral approach, because you need to sensitize the community, you need to sensitize the parents, and also the child himself or herself to appreciate the fact that, you know, there is life out there, and actually they can make the best use of their time. They can go to school like any other child, and they can, I mean, they can develop and become better citizens and be able to provide for themselves. So I think for us, really, it is kind of strengthening a multi-sectoral approach, like the way Dr. Sabrina has mentioned, because, I mean, you cannot support the community alone and leave the child. You need the medical bit. You need Ministry of Gender, for example, to play the community approaches. So I think for us, really, is trying to strengthen the linkages, but also to see how we can support the systems without the different ministries. But of course, again, trying to play together with the civil society organizations, provide for, because these children cannot wait for tomorrow. They want the support today. So I think we try to provide for what we can provide today, but again, to strengthen how the future can be built to make sure that these systems are able to be sustained.
Okay, well, let me just read a few comments from social media. And we have Malinga, who says, my plea to parents is to always seek for information when something unusual happens to a child. For instance, some parents with children suffering from autism tend to call them mad. They call it witchcraft without proper information. And then Albert says, if we can stop stigma towards people, towards people with disabilities, then all would be okay for them. And finally, we have Tumukunde, who says, most traditional schools that have not been rehabilitated don't cater for them. There are no ramps and no toilets for them. But let's take a short break. We'll be right back. From the Kampala Serena Conference Nile Room. Well, just before we continue the panel discussion, I'd just like to take one more question or comment from one of our guests in the studio. Yes, sir.
I'm called Benon. In Dazone. I'm an IT specialist, and my specialization is called adaptive technology. That is the ICT for persons with special needs. And my passion and my engagement is technology for education. But I also wanted to add my voice to what the lady, are you
Dr. Sabrina?
Yes, please. Yeah. Is that when you're raising a child with special needs in the home, whatever type of disability, visual impairment or Down syndrome or any other, it requires the attention, a participation of everybody. For instance, if there are other children in the home, and they have to be trained as often as need arise so that they can participate in the life of their sibling that has a special need or has a disability, because that's what makes a person. For me, everybody at my home participated in my life at home. And when you go to school, the sweeper, the cook, the secretary, all these have to be sensitized and as often as possible trained, so that this child finds an environment that empowers them, that accepts them. That's what makes a person to achieve their potential. Right. So that's one of them. But the other things that you need also to remember, there is quite a lot of investment that has got to be made in these children, because some of, like me, who's visually impaired, I realized when I went to school, I needed this and that device, special device, that other children were not using. And so somebody else had to put money in it to make me what I am. And that happens throughout until somebody gets to university. So it's not a very easy matter, but when it's a combination of efforts,
Yes.
the success comes. These people achieve their potential. Like Dr. Naboth, I mean, I'm able to do most of the things that sighted people do. When I sit on my computer, I train you when you are sighted, and so on, and I excel there. But it's because of the input that has to come, and it is because of the courage that has to be built in this particular child that you can make it, and this is needed at every stage. Otherwise, people will keep reminding you, as Dr. Naboth saying, will keep reminding you, this is only what you can do, you can't do this. Right. But you have to keep refusing, and you realize that all things are possible with those who believe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Oh, just before we continue, there's a question here from Maria Natkunda, and she says, how can an ordinary teacher empower themselves to identify children with disabilities from their peers where it is not evident? Dr. Nabo.
Thank you very much, Josephine. I think it is something to do with the government, because the system of training that these people have been having is that they forgot to know that along the way they will encounter children with special needs. And that's why, as Doctor was saying, it's high time in their curriculum they should include special needs children. Okay. They are there, they are put in school, but they are trained to handle only. So at the end of the day, even if you bring in this kid to school, he or she will leave.
But also to just quickly answer Maria, and that's a really good question. If a child is not doing well academically, that's a pointer that they are different from the other children in school. And so it's up to this teacher to skill themselves to be able to identify a child who has dyslexia, this arithmetic, this something, this whatever, or hearing impairment. A lot of times when children have hearing impairment, the teacher will say they are naughty, they don't understand, they even call them stupid, which is unfortunate. Yeah. And yet, the teacher just needed to understand that this child needs a second check so that they can be able to be tested, checked properly, and be able to help these children.
Sure. Just one quick point. Yes, I think for me, I think it is because I think teachers have, can I say, shied away from playing a very active role, because from what I know is that they have functional assessment guidelines where they're supposed to, every child that's admitted and regularly, they're supposed to study a child, assess the child according to the guidelines, and be able to understand this child and identify the gaps of learning, but also see how to provide for this child. But I think the gap here is that I think this is being looked at as an extra load, because it takes quite a long for you to do a functional assessment on a given child and be able to study that child every day. So I think looking at what it needs to, for you to do that, I think that what gives the teacher a burden, but actually there are guidelines on functional assessment where a teacher is supposed to assess a child on a daily basis and to be able to identify the disabilities. But
also if you have this teacher who has 400 children in the class, like our UPE schools, it becomes a complete nightmare. But in the smaller classes, maybe that's possible.
And that's in very few schools.
We can also look at the role of civil society organizations in trying to ensure that children receive special education. For example, right now we are advocating for inclusive education trainings, where at this point we are training teachers in mainstream school on how to deal with a disabled child alongside the other normal child. And this has really helped many teachers, and they are trying to find their talent and their ability to support them, but it can only work in schools with low numbers.
And as we close, because we have just a couple of minutes to close, I'd just like you to all make your closing remarks, keeping in mind that we know there are actually a number of people who have children with special needs, but maybe they're keeping them away, maybe, you know, they're afraid to show that this is my child, or they're hiding them away. So I'd just quickly like you to make your closing statements. I don't know who would like to start.
Okay, we go like this.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me, I want to speak on behalf of parents. First of all, as a family, one of the ways that can help you overcome is to learn how to cope. Coping strategies are very important. Look at the different activities you have at home and learn to adjust. Just learn how to adjust. And then we really ask fathers, husbands, because 90% of parents of children with special needs are single parents. So we just want to ask fathers to be part of this drive, to be part of this journey. A single mother is really hard, and telling such a mother to cope is also difficult because it involves resources. It's very expensive to raise a child with special needs. They have to go to hospital, they have to go to, you have to think of a school where they can go and they will be supported, even at home.
And you emotionally need to be supported as well.
Yeah,
as you're dealing
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
Okay.
The
Very
emotions.
quickly, Dr. Nabo.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I call upon everyone that is watching this program, and I normally say it, that a person is not or doesn't have disabilities unless you see them. You see the disabilities in that person. Try as much as you can to support that person. Not supporting him as a charity. Support him as your responsibility, like any other person. That is what will make a difference. Then secondly, I'm calling upon, I know there are many people out there. Recently, I'm in court with a high-profile person who's been keeping a kid in a bedroom for many years. The kid is now 7 years. So we're in court, and high-profile person.
Because the child
Because
has
the
special
child
needs.
has special, is a special case child. So I call upon you, don't shy away. You never know, that kid will be the only person who will bail you out. So I call upon you, you give them the support they need, and guide them, and do not kindly do not pamper them. Identify the potential in that kid and capitalize on that. He will be the kind of person you will be shocked to see.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Nabot. Esther?
Yeah, I think you maybe just picking up and summarizing from Dr. Nabot's point. I think for me, I think people just need to know that every child has a good potential and can strive in life. But I think it is all about getting the information in terms of where are the services, which services can you provide for this child? Where are the assistive, for example, assistive devices? These days we're in technology. There are so many devices that children can use to be able to support them and help them learn, for example, in terms of health. Maybe Dr. Sabme don't want to go there. But I think for me it is really about information, and I think to demystify the thinking in the communities and attaching these disabilities to different, like either witchcraft or something else. So I think for me it is really looking out for solutions and not trying to make this child a culprit of himself or herself.
Well, thank you, Esther. And finally, Dr. Sabrina?
So many times as a pediatrician, I have the unfortunate circumstance to have to break news to a parent, you know, that your child has a hearing impairment or that your child has Down syndrome or whatever. For me as a doctor, I'd like that other doctors break this news gently and give hope to the parents and be the person who coordinates every single thing that has to be done. As pediatricians, we are the coordinators of the multidisciplinary action for the child to be able to grow. Because we know very well that disability is not inability. We would like to see every single child achieve their fullest potential, irrespective of the special need.
Oh, thank you very much, all of you, for coming and sharing your stories, Rosemary, Dr. Nabot. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and thank you for bringing your son to join us on the show. I think it's given it a bit more, a better picture of what it's like to raise a child like that. Well, that was our episode for Perspective with Josephine Karunji this week. This month, we'll be talking about children and the things that affect them. So be sure to join us next Sunday. But coming up is NTV Weekend Edition. Stay tuned.